Okay, usually when I do a 10-minute rant, it's not usually about something that's less than 10 minutes. But in this case, I feel like I really want to talk about this. The Fantastic Four trailer dropped, and I really felt like I want to talk about this because the Fantastic Four is one of those comic book properties that really should work as a movie. And yet, it never does. And I think there's just a few problems with the concept that I think people are not getting. And I'm hoping that this newest movie has figured this out and has implemented it very well. And I'm going to start with just saying a few things I've noticed about Fantastic Four. Okay. First of all, if you're going to do Fantastic Four, you can bring in Doctor Doom, but here's something that people don't understand about the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four are not supervillain beaters. They're not. I feel like this is something that most movies get wrong with this concept. The Fantastic Four are explorers. They're scientists. That is their origin story about how they got on a rocket flight and blasted themselves off. And I actually believe that that in the origin story, even back down to the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby days in the 60s of the original comic book, they were not supposed to be the astronauts that launched on that rocket. But they were so determined to want to do it themselves that they did it. Now, unfortunately, pride does go before a fall, and that's when they hit the cosmic rays. And that's when they got, and that's when they got their powers. And then here's the thing, after that happened, I'm going to get into a bit of the comic book facts here on this, but there's some people that say that the Fantastic Four was essentially a copy of a DC comic book at the time. If you're not familiar with DC and Marvel, come on, you know who they are. Jeez, we all know this. But essentially, Marvel's Fantastic Four was the catapult that really launched Marvel into Marvel. It was one of their biggest sales comic of the time. It eventually led to stuff like Spider-Man, the Avengers, X-Men, all that. But a lot of people say like, hey, this Marvel comic looks a lot like a DC comic that was called The Challengers of the Unknown, where I think it was maybe 5 guys that were dressed in very similar uniforms, would just go into these extraordinary situations. Now, I think those were probably ordinary people, but the Fantastic Four, they had superpowers. But here's the thing, the superpowers weren't really the thing that really defined them. They were defined more by scientists. I really got the feeling like even if the Fantastic Four didn't have their powers, the government would still call on Reed Richards to deal with certain things. Because, like I said, the Fantastic Four are scientists, but here's the thing. Reed is really the lead on this. And Johnny and Ben aren't really scientists at all, but they are more like assistants, really. They support Reed because they trust him. Sue is actually pretty smart, but unfortunately, back then when Sue was created, women didn't really have a good role, and I would have to say that Marvel never really had its own version of Wonder Woman until, like, say, Captain Marvel came around, the Carol Danvers version one. And, but Sue has really become one of the most powerful characters on the team. It wasn't until very recently, like say maybe not recently, but it wasn't until like over 20 years after the character was created that she chose to call herself the Invisible Woman. She was the Invisible Girl for 2 decades, which is kind of strange that this character who became a mother and had dealt with a lot of things wasn't really treated well. And this is kind of another thing that the movies don't really get right, but I'm going to get to that. So the Fantastic Four, they are explorers. They are not the type of people that it's like, oh no, here's Doctor Doom, we better stop him. That's not the direction you want to go. Now, my personal contact with the Fantastic Four was on the cartoons I used to watch as a kid. Specifically one that was like Hanna-Barbera's Super Adventures, which had like the quartet in there. And I found out that a lot of these things, they just simply took the comic book and they made it into a thing. And honestly, I thought, wow, these are really good adventures. And the Fantastic Four was something that I really loved watching. Now, there's been many iterations of it. For example, there was this one weird one that apparently I don't know, it's like they didn't have like rights to, I don't know if they just didn't have the rights to the character of the Human Torch, or perhaps that they didn't really want to show this character because he had these flame powers and they didn't want kids playing with fire or something like that. But yeah, he was replaced with a robot, Herbie the robot, who actually appears on the trailer, which I found like that was kind of interesting, really. So yeah. Anyway, that cartoon was kind of, I remember watching that one and thinking like, and that was like a second-rate one. And then there's been like various other animated forms of it. And even The Thing had his own solo series. And that was one where they had Ben Grimm like as a teenager, and he has this ring and he goes, "Thing ring, do your thing." So he can become the Thing at will, which is really dumb because what makes the Thing interesting is the fact that he is always the Thing. I don't know why you would, anyway, that's another thing that, oh gosh, there's so much I really want to talk about with this group. Okay, so essentially, yeah, Fantastic Four are not only explorers and scientists, they are also family. This is very different than, say, a group like, say, the Avengers, which were put together by the government, or the X-Men that were put together by Professor X. But with the X-Men, they don't even really like each other. But with the Fantastic Four, are kind of a bit of both. I mean, not only are they put together, but I mean, Reed and Sue are married. Johnny is Sue's brother, and Ben is Reed's best friend. So they are so much family that it's really great. And I kind of like the fact that they're really exploring that issue in this new movie. And so for that, I mean, they're always like, there's never really a moment where it's like, is this the end of the FF? No, they're family. They're always going to be together, powers or none. They could have their powers taken away. They'd still be together. And so that's something I really just want to see about that. Now, also, my personal experience with the Fantastic Four was when I was reading comics when I was younger. And there was a writer and artist named John Byrne who got the reins on the Fantastic Four, and most people say like he had the best run on the Fantastic Four since Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And he was able to take the book to a different direction, not only art-wise, but he really developed these characters really well. Reed and Sue got a lot of development. And I have to admit, Johnny and Ben kind of remained the same. Johnny's always been a bit of a literal hothead, and he's always been a bit full of himself. And I do kind of like how they play that. And Ben's condition with him constantly being this thing was always an issue. But when I read Byrne's run, I only read the run where the Thing actually left the group, and the She-Hulk took his place. And John Byrne really developed the She-Hulk for his own, and really made this character shine. And it's because of that we have, we had the She-Hulk series and stuff like that. This is a character that I feel like has been underutilized in the MCU, but I feel like eventually is probably going to come to their own. And didn't do the fourth wall breaking until a little bit later. So anyway, if they're going to do a Fantastic Four movie, I'm kind of glad they're focusing on the whole Galactus thing, because I feel like with that one movie, The Rise of the Silver Surfer, we got this weird purple cloud as Galactus, and I'm kind of going like, if you've ever read the original story with the Silver Surfer and Galactus, it is so very epic, and you feel the tense world in peril situation of this whole thing, which I really think that a movie could really do this justice. And I remember even seeing a cartoon version of this. For some reason, Galactus was green. I don't know why. But yeah, I know. So the fact they're going that direction makes me feel really good. I think they've shown this John Malkovich in this thing, and I think people think he plays a villain known as the Red Ghost, a villain I have absolutely no idea about. I don't know what they're doing with this. Now, it really feels like this film is going for an Incredibles look, which is strange because I think the Incredibles took a few pages from the Fantastic Four. I mean, that's pretty obvious with the way their powers are structured. But, I mean, they're really going for that aesthetic, and I don't know how it's going to fit in the MCU. I get the feeling like once they do this Secret Wars thing, they're going to try and bring back, they're probably going to bring in the Fantastic Four, Avengers, maybe the X-Men, Spider-Man, and they're probably going to bring them all from different universes or something like that, and then sort of put them all in the same universe. That's probably how that's going to work. I don't know. But yeah, I am excited about the Fantastic Four, and maybe we're going to see an actual definitive version of it.